Hello, everyone, and welcome to Voice Like a Lion podcast. Today, I have with me Greg Dinkin, and you can correct me if I absolutely butchered that. He is a speaker, author, and business coach where he focuses on mindset and helping businesses and business owners make winning decisions. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So, I know we've been talking back and forth a little bit on LinkedIn, and you were talking about this thing called a mind shift. I've heard of mindset, I've done mindset work to a certain degree, but I've never heard of a mind shift. Can you explain what that is?
A mind shift is really any moment where you think one thing and then think something else. So it could just be, I can't do this, to I can do this. Um, I think it's a great question. It's almost so basic that it's hard to answer. Um, just lead with a common story that you may have you heard of Roger Bannister?
Yep.
Okay, so it's just like it was believed, it was common knowledge. Everybody knew that you could not run a mile in under 4 minutes. Just fact, right? That was the mindset of the collective at that moment. And then Bannister did it, and then the whole mindset shifted. So it went from you cannot do this to you can do this. And then, of course, 46 days later, someone ran a mile in under 4 minutes. 100 days later, three people in one race. The floodgates opened. So, ultimately, to make this very practical, if you're thinking something right now, which is usually a ceiling, I can't, I can't scale my business. I can't hire more people. I can't grow 500%. Ideally, something happens to shift your mind, and then your mindset shifts.
So how do you, if you're talking to a business owner right now where they are doing, let's say, $1 million a year, right? And I love that story, by the way, the Roger Bannister story, the breaking the 4 minute mile. But they're doing $1 million a year, and their dreams and aspirations is get to 100 million, and they go, I just don't know how I'm going to get there. How would you help them shift their mindset?
It's a great question. So, I think one of the fastest ways is really to surround yourself with the right people. So it's like I don't believe I can do this amount of revenue. So first of all, recognize that's your belief system, right? Hey, I'm stuck, or I don't think I can do more. One of the fastest ways, it's like monkey see, monkey do, is find other people similar to you that have scaled their business. Because then the mind shift becomes, if they can do it, I can too. So you hear all the time, surround yourself with you're the average of the five people you spend the most time with. So a lot of it is going to conferences, taking in information, going to networking groups. So I would say the first thing to do is surround yourself with people that have done it. Now, if you do that, there's some element of going, your mind can come up with all of the reasons why you can't. So, that person has an MBA from Wharton, or that person came from money. The mind will do things to justify our existence. But if you have the ability to actually believe that, and the best way to believe it is to see it.
I agree. So, with somebody out there who may be listening to the podcast and they go, Greg, that's great. But what is it that you did to be able to help you through your mindset shifts? Who was it in your environment that helped you?
Well, one of my favorite stories, it really happened by accident. And look, I think this notion of how do you create a banister effect in your own life or your own business, right? Where all of a sudden you believe one thing and you snap your fingers. So I was in addition to being an author, I was a literary agent. And one of my clients was a guy named Phil Gordon, who some people remember was the host of Celebrity Poker Showdown on Bravo. So, at that time, when poker was tipping and getting really popular, people knew Phil. And at that point in time, I had a lot of belief systems around poker and about money. I think we all do around money, which is often coming from our parents or society. It might be something like rich people are sellouts, or you can't make money doing things you love, or it's harder for a rich person to make it into heaven. All of these thoughts. And so I had a lot of beliefs coming from my dad, a well intended person that said, poker's a hard way to make an easy living, or the best way to go on a losing streak is to quit your day job. So even though I was a good poker player and had success, there was a lot of limiting beliefs about how to really succeed at it. So before the World Series of Poker in 2006, I was just editing Phil Gordon's book. So as his agent, before it goes to the publisher. I'm editing it. And Phil, do you play poker at all, Steven?
I have a little bit, but I'm definitely not as good as you are. I'm definitely not pro level at all.
Okay. So in a poker tournament, the way it works is you're in the tournament until you lose your chips. And then once
Hmm.
you lose your chips, you're out. But the way tournaments are structured, it used to be 10%, now it's 15%. If you finish in the top 10 or 15%, you get some money back. So it becomes this very much survival thing of like, I want to get some money, I want to cash in the tournament. So in the tournament I played in, there were 788 people. So at the time, hey, if I come in 78th place, I'm in the money. And then it's like, well, if you get 78th place, you're going to make, say, $200. But if you get to 40th, you might make 1,000. So Phil kept writing in this book that people's natural inclination as you get closer to the end is to be really passive and be really conservative because you want to move up. But Phil kept saying in the book, the money is at the top. The money is at the top. The money is at the top. So let go of this natural inclination to just stay in the game. And that's when you want to be more aggressive. It's worth risking going out in 70th place or 40th place or even 10th place because the money is at the top. So that was my mind shift moment. Now, up until that moment, and look, that one, I didn't have to go to a Tony Robbins seminar or read a book. I just got that one honestly. And it really was honestly because I believe Phil is a smart guy. He had won tournaments. Everything he said made sense to me. And I think it's a good place to just pause. You can't really psych yourself up without evidence. So to back to the business owner doing a million a year, you can't just say, I'm going to make 100 million. I'm going to make 100 million. You need some real proof of it. Part of the proof is, hey, I saw someone else do it and they don't have anything on me. Or we've been growing 200% for the last 3 years and we added a new technology. So the main part of this story is I believed Phil. I had a mind shift. This makes sense to me. People get more conservative. I'd seen that in tournaments, and it's worth risking that because the money is at the top. So that was my Bannister moment. The money's at the top. So I get in this tournament, and the most I had ever earned in a poker tournament before this was $7,000. Not a bad score, but $7,000. 788 people. At the end of the first day, there's 99 of us left, and I'm the eighth most in chips. So I could just coast and get into the money, but I'm not trying to get into the money because I've had this mind shift that the money's at the top. So we get down to 70, 50, 40, 30, and I'm not looking at the payouts because I'm not worried about holding on to my chips. I'm not worried about making, an extra 500 or 1,000. I'm going for the money at the top. And now we get down. So these are like 12 to 14-hour days. At the end of the second day, there's 9 people left. And now everybody's really like clenched. They're conservative. I don't want to lose my chips. But again, my mind shift is the money is at the top. This is when I want to be more aggressive. So I get more aggressive. I knock a guy out. We go to the final table the next day, and I'm first in chips. Now, eighth place paid $17,000. So I had already won, guaranteed myself 10 grand more than I had ever won. But again, I'm not happy with eighth or seventh or sixth. I want to go for the monies at the top. Now, it wasn't the perfect Hollywood ending, but I did come in second and make $102,542.
Well,
So this was a real, and here's the important thing I want to say. I didn't become a better poker player. It's like, if you're running a business, you're not going to overnight be like, wow, I know how to write better copy or I know how to do better logistics. It's ultimately what's going to allow you to make that big leap was I believe that I can. My mind has shifted because again, before Bannister ran that mile, plenty of people were training hard. Plenty of people were running. Plenty of people were going after it. But ultimately, the mind it really has, I think, plays the biggest role.
that's an amazing story. I think that's really cool. Just the breakdown of belief, right? So is your belief in yourself, your skill set didn't change. You had the same skill set as before you read Phil's book, but you decided it's like, wait, this is possible. And this is something that I've seen time and time again, even in my own life, is when I'm talking to business owners who are, I remember the first time I ever had a conversation with a billionaire and I'm talking to him and it's like, okay, A, he knows something I don't, but B, is he's just a normal guy. Like, this is just a guy. And it's like, oh wow, that's interesting. It's like, okay, that's possible now. And I think that it's the unique art of making something possible for someone. I think that this is something I would love to get your perspective on. This is, there's a lot of times I've talked to people who've gone through really hard situations. So they've been in poverty, they grew up in impoverished, and they believe that that's all that there is for them. And I've noticed that if they could change their beliefs, there's people that I know that they come from the same kind of situations or worse, and then they become multimillionaires. And it's like, so what's the biggest difference is not opportunity as much as it is belief system and knowledge. Have you seen that to be true, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, and take that person that grew up in poverty. How many stories have you read about people that were in poverty that said that adversity created resilience that made me? So
Mm.
again, it's really not what happened, it's our belief about what happened, right? So it's like, if you go, yeah, I grew up in poverty, that makes me tougher than that guy that grew up with a silver spoon in his mouth. So it's not what happened, it's how you're thinking about it. Whatever your circumstance, hey, I've been through hell and back. That makes me more resilient. That makes me tougher. That means I'm going to outlast that guy. Yeah, that guy's got an MBA from MIT. So what? Like, when push comes to shove, I'm going to outwork that guy. And again, there are so many stories about people that grew up in poverty or had adversity that have been incredibly successful. So the advice to that person is read those stories, but again, you can't force it. Like with Phil, I couldn't force it, but you have to find a way to go, that actually makes sense to me, right? That I can see how my poverty is making me hungrier. I know that I can outwork people. So find the stories that you actually believe.
So what have you seen, or let's say that you're talking to someone, and or I'll just use real examples. Like we see in the news with Elon Musk, and his net worth will go from however many billions down to, he'll lose 50 billion in a week. And there's people that I know, I've been one of these people in the past, where I'll watch not necessarily my net worth, but my bank account. So it's like my bank account will grow because I'll close more clients. And then it's like my bank account will go down because something happens. And there's been times in the past where it will negatively impact me. So how would you help me work through that? So let's say that it's like being able to, instead of holding on to the results but just putting the work in, you focus more on the work and it will dictate the results instead of putting so much time, energy, effort into the result itself. What would you say to something like that?
Yeah, look, that's a great question, and I can come back to poker on that. So the way that I would look at that is, I signed up for fluctuations. There's going to be
Mm.
variance. So when you look at, hey, like my bankroll or my account is down, well, if you weren't working for yourself and you had a job with IBM, your bank account would be much steadier. So you look at that and say, look, I signed up for this. I chose this. Part of being an entrepreneur is having variance and uncertainty. And because I'm able to deal with that uncertainty, that allows me to have a much higher ceiling. So again, it's how you view it, right? Like how you view the fluctuation. So, I say all the time, it's one long game. So when I'm losing, I'm going, I lost tonight, I lost this week. It's one long game. I say that all the time.
That's really
That's
good. I like that. It's one long
Yeah.
game, because I think that shifts the perspective. This is something I've noticed even with my son. Is there'll be times that he'll get really upset about something, and it's not because of lack of skill or lack of knowledge. I say, son, the reason why you're mad is you set an expectation, you set a time frame that was never there, and because you self-imposed this time frame and it didn't happen in the time frame that you expected, now you're upset. And I think that this is something really interesting. I would love to get your take on that. Is there's times that, like, if we believe that this is the long game, right? Well, what does long mean? Does long, because long has different variations, right? Long could be, well, it's, this is going to take me a month. Like, that's a long time. It's like, this could take me a year. That's a long time. Or it's like, or this could take me 10 years. But if you extend out the time frame, or if you don't even self-impose a time frame, you just believe that this is as long as it's going to take. It's just going to take a while. Then, at least for me, from what I've seen, is when you set that, it makes it easier for you to keep going because there's not this like daunting clock on the wall effect.
Yeah, and again, the story, like the stories we tell ourselves, I think words are powerful. You know,
Yeah.
it's that expression, you know, overnight success usually takes a couple decades.
Yep.
And so right. You know, then also that thought of like, you know, the gap between um what is it? Action and response, or like stimulus and response. So it's like, boom, you look and see, wow, my bank account is down, or I've had a bad month. Okay, what now? And I think in that very moment of like, damn it, you know, I'm down. What story are you telling yourself? You know, you start telling yourself, look, hey, I signed up for this as an entrepreneur. I'm someone who can handle risk, or I've had bad months before and I've come back. I just think whatever words you're choosing there are going to have a really big impact on your story.
So how do you help someone who, let's say, they don't realize that there's these tracks playing in their mind that their parents gave to them from, childhood, and they come up in those moments where it's like, oh man, they get into a hard time, and that's when those tracks start playing. How do you help people when they're in the good times be able to bring those things to the surface and then rewire it so that way those tracks stop playing?
You're asking awesome questions. You know, I mean, that is the $1 million question. And yeah, how do you rewire your brain? So first of all, if you hit Control Alt Delete on your computer, it's going to show you all the programs that are running, right?
Yeah.
We don't have a Control Alt Delete for our minds. So in other words, we have all of these beliefs, right, that are coming from parents, family, culture, society, whatever. So I think the awareness to start with, to say, wow, I've got all of these belief systems. Um, so I think you start by noticing, right? You start by paying attention, being more mindful for sure. Um, then, and I think a great resource is, and if you want to just look up thework.com, THEWORK. There's a woman named Byron Katie, amazing woman. I've heard her
Yeah.
speak live. Yeah, yeah, loving what is. So she actually has a tool for this. So you have a thought pops into your head. You know, I'm never going to turn this business around, right? Or like I'm never going to get out of this hole, or I'm you know I can never do this. She gives you. Did you pull it up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the four questions are: is that true? Yes or no? And you might just go, yes, it's true. Can I know that to be absolutely true? Normally with that one, you soften a little bit. Can I know to be absolutely true I'll never make it in this business? Yes or no? Okay. How do I react when I think that thought? I get angry, I get tense, I get anxious. Okay. Now with that, you're noticing like that thought, just a thought. And this is the beauty of Byron Katie. She's like, they're not even real. Like we're going crazy over things that, where's the thought? I can't see it. I can't smell it. I can't feel it. So how do I react when I think that thought? Man, it really throws me off. It puts me in this anxious, whirlwind. And then who would I be without that thought? And that question really moves you into a solution focus of like, wow, if I wasn't thinking about that, I would just bear down and get to work. If I wasn't thinking that, I would be more hopeful. I would be more confident. And that would translate to how I deal with customers, how I deal with people. So, I mean, look, you're asking really good questions because some of this seems very woo woo and spiritual mindset. And you're like, what do I actually do? So, yeah, I mean, start by noticing your thoughts. And then those four questions are really, and often for me, it's just one question. If I have a thought and go, is that true? No, it's not true. Okay, move on.
Hmm.
Like, I'll never be able to, I'll never be able to write, a bestseller. Is that true? No. Okay, move on.
I love that. I love that. That's the question that you turn to, and yeah, the reason why I want it to be practical is there's something you said earlier that I strongly believe, and I think it's really interesting, just the word believe. But the, if you're a business owner doing a million, all you've ever done is a million for 10 years, right? So if you're sitting in front of the wall and you're just chanting over and over again that you're going to make $100 million next year, it's like there's not evidence that that's true. So if you're not surrounded with people or influences on your life, books, whatever it is, podcasts that are rewiring your brain to at least make that possible for you, you're really just talking to the wall. And that's what I find really fascinating. I love what you're saying because there is the aspect of just asking yourself the right questions to be able to get yourself out of a moment or to keep you from doing a tailspin. And there's also the practical where it's like, where is the evidence? Where have you put the work in? Or who are the people around you that are showing you that there is a different way? The same way, like you said with Roger Bannister, is it was fascinating that he ran that race and then breaks a 4 minute mile, and then it happened. Well, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like basically within the next 20 days there was somebody else did it, and it had never been done before. So it's like, how does how does that happen? Is because they have seen someone that's done it now.
Yeah, look, and I think that's a great look. If you've done 10 mil, if you've done a million a year for 10 years, and then you go, how's it going to be different next year? It probably won't be any different. So that's when you like, and look, cognitive behavioral therapy is based on evidence. Well, so if you don't have any, like you either like, hey, I took this course on copywriting, or I built a new skill set, or I hired somebody new, or I'm ahead of the game on AI, or I've learned about my customers, or I've hired a data scientist. Look, it's probably not going to get better next year. Like, and that's why you got to go beyond. Yeah, there's a mindset and a mind shift, but you need the evidence. And the evidence is going to be based on really your effort. Yeah, I've done 10 million. I've flatlined for 10 years. It's going to be different this year because whatever you say after because, you better believe it. Forget about convincing your spouse or your friends or whoever. You better believe it. It's like, for 10 years, I've said my New Year's resolution is I'm going to lose weight. Why is it going to be different this year? Well, because I've never prepaid for a personal trainer before. And now that I've prepaid for the personal trainer, like that's going to be different. Or, like I finally, I really like now my hemoglobin A1C is now higher and I'm really scared. Like whatever, if you really, it's probably not going to change unless you've done something different. And, my TED talk was set up as a debate. Is it actions or thoughts that change the way we that really determine our destiny? And I'll give away the ending. It's really not one or the other, it's both.
Mm.
So the actions influence belief. If you just talk theoretically about mind shift and say, I'm changing my mindset this year, I'm going to break through. If you've been doing a million a year for 10 years and you're not doing anything differently, I'm betting against you.
That's
Because
I love that.
yeah,
I
you
love
need
that aspect.
yeah, you need the evidence to then change your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I would love to get your take on this. Is I think even if you take it, so that's kind of more of like a macro scale, right? We're talking about business. Is even on a micro scale, building belief in yourself. If I'm going to say, well, I'm going to lose weight this year because I prepaid a personal trainer, and then like that's a great way to look at it. But if I'm at home and every time I pass the pantry, I'm getting a handful of chips, I may have prepaid the trainer, but I'm still counterintuitively working against myself. So it's like, what, even those moments where it's like, I'm going to be healthier this year because I prepaid my trainer and I'm going to keep my word to myself. Hey, I'm going to have 2 chips and I'm going to put the bag away. And what's your take on people just keeping their word to themselves first?
Well, phenomenal question. And my the first thing is I believe in having accountability partners.
Mm,
So if left to our own devices, the odds of success there's a study that when we have an accountability partner, the odds of success are 95% higher. So in that scenario, okay, so let's just go through it. This year it's going to be different. And I need to lose some weight. So this this year it's going to be different. This is the year I'm going to lose the weight because whatever comes after the because is really your plan, and it's the plan that's going to help you believe. So you're right. It's because I've hired a personal trainer. Let's go a little bit extreme. It's because Stephen and I are accountability partners. And if I don't lose 20 pounds in the next 3 months, I'm putting pictures of me in a Speedo up on Facebook. Like that's a consequence. And by the way, that's a much better confidence than I got to give Steven $1,000. So a little bit is knowing yourself. Or it's also like I I'm raising money to run in a 10K or run in a marathon, and I don't want to let those people down. And I think this example of the losing weight and the scaling your business is whatever comes after because is likely more than one thing. So I've hired the personal trainer. Um, I'm meal prepping every Sunday. I have an accountability partner. I have consequences. I've signed up for the race. My partner has agreed to buy me a new suit or a wardrobe if I hit this goal. I think you need all those things. I think the more things that are in your favor, now you go, wow, I really got a pretty robust plan here. I got a lot of things going and I have a lot at stake.
I really
Wow.
like that.
With all that at stake and with all that I've done to now, I actually believe I can do this. Why is it going to be different this year than the last 10 years? Because I've done these things. The last 10 years, I didn't take a course in AI. I wasn't part of a business group. I wasn't part of a mastermind. I didn't read 15 books the year before. And again, so I keep hitting this theme of like, is it action or belief? It's both. And the actions impact the beliefs.
Love that. I love that a lot. I agree wholeheartedly because this is something I talked to my wife about quite a bit. A good example, I'll use a real one. Last night is I was grouchy yesterday. We've just had a long past few days staying up late basically. And so I was a little bit grouchy and she said, "You need to be kind to me." And I just asked her, I said, "Define kind." And she had to explain to me, it's like, well, when you talk to me this way, I don't feel as if you're being nice to me. When you talk to our son this way, I don't feel like you're being kind. And it's like, okay, because I want her. I said, okay, great, I can work on those things. And I think the ambiguous nature of the word kind, it's like, oh, you just need to be nice. It's like, but what if I thought I was being nice? It's like, 'cause I told her, I said, I wasn't being unkind to you. I was just short with my words. And she said, well, you were unkind. It's like, I need you to define that. And so that's where what you're saying with actions and thoughts is for me is I can say, okay, these are my actions, these are my thoughts in those moments. And so I can, if I work on the actions, it can directly correlate and affect my thoughts to then, basically you start this more healthy cycle of seeing how your actions play into what you're thinking.
Yeah, that's a great example. And I created something called the Human Success Lab, which that's a whole we could go on that for hours. But when someone says to me, "I want to be a better father," this year I'm going to be a better father. I immediately say, "Yeah, that's so vague." Or I want to be more present with my kids, and a lot of this comes back to like BJ Fogg, Tiny Habits, and um, James Clear, Atomic Habits.
Yep.
If you can't check a box for being a better father, what you can check a box for is I'm going to read a bedtime story to my son every night, or I'm going to commit to doing bath time, at least 4 days a week. So these are things that you can actually commit to. So when you say things like, I'm going to focus on business development this year, it's too vague. And if I'm your accountability partner for business development and we talk once a week and I go, how'd you do? You're gonna go, I did pretty good. It's very different if you say, I'm having 2 coffee meetings a week. I'm sending out 35 messages in LinkedIn. I'm et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I really like that when you say be more specific about what it means to be kind. Because that was too vague for you to act on.
And that's something that's taken a lot of work for me to get to that point. Still working on it, but I just think that there's so much power in the specifics. I mean, if I want to grow my business, right? It's like that's a vague term. Like, how much do you want to grow by? The same way where if somebody comes up to me, it's like, hey, can you just give me some money? If I hand you $1, you have more money than you did when you approached me, right? It's like, but if you needed $2,000 to pay your rent because you're getting evicted, then you should have asked a better question. And this is what I tell my son all the time. The power of your question dictates the power of the answer. So if you want to get a very specific answer, you got to ask a specific question.
Yeah, and how old's your son?
He's 11.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting, like with kids, I would always start with the language, right? Like, I can't do that. A lot of people say, oh, just a lot of times, if a kid says I can't do that, I might just go right to like, is that true?
Yeah,
Because
I
instead
do
instead of
that.
yeah,
I just think
instead
it's
of
funny for him.
because look, good coaches, good parents, good managers, they're not telling people what to do. They're getting people to self-reflect. And as
That's
you
good.
know, an 11-year-old is old enough and mature enough to self-reflect. I can't do that. Is that true? What do you mean, Dad? I mean, they might react like that to
Yeah.
you, but you go, is that true? And then ideally, with you said with great questions, you lead them to their own mind shift. Well, remember when you were in third grade and you said you couldn't do that science project? Oh, yeah, I remember that, Dad. Well, what happened? And then let them tell the story, and then they now have a story. They have real evidence of a time when they thought they couldn't do something and they could.
Yeah. Now, I'll give you a real example. This happened not too long ago, a few months ago, but we were out and about, and my son had double knotted his shoes, and they had somehow come untied, but there was still this one knot left in it. And I told him, I said, okay, you got to untie that, and you have to retie your shoe. And he goes, okay. So he starts working on it. He gets frustrated. About 5 minutes later, he said, I can't do it. It's impossible. And I said, son, is that true? And he goes, it's impossible. I've tried everything. I said, so what is everything? What have you actually tried? And he's like, well, I tried untying it this way and doing it that way. And I go, so are you saying that if I took your shoe to the almost 8 billion people in this world, that no one could figure out how to do that? And he goes, and he stopped asking me questions. He stopped saying anything, but he figured it out. He was able to untie his shoe and retie it. And I think that just being able to give people a reframe, which this is always interesting to me, it's like being able to, because I think in moments we need that third party. That's where I love what you were talking about with the accountability partner, is it's easy for me to do that for him, right? Because this is my son. It's easier. I'm the third party. I'm seeing this differently than him. But if you're alone in a dark spot and in a hard place and you haven't surrounded yourself with the right people, the right influences, then all of a sudden it's a little bit more difficult to be able to get yourself out of a tailspin because you're not having that third party say, hey, remember when you did this? Similar to what you said, it's like, remember when in third grade you were able to do this? Remember the last time that the business didn't work, you did this and then it ended up being successful? Do you remember this? Surrounding yourself with the right people I've seen to be vitally important.
I agree, and I think men more so than women tend to isolate. It's
Yes.
this like warrior mentality of like I'm going to figure this out myself. I was just talking to a guy. It's like, yeah, I'm going to go to Alaska by myself and survive, and it's like, no, you're going to go to Alaska by yourself and you're going to die. There was a book about that. Remember, there was a movie about that.
Yep.
Um, what was that? What was that book called?
I don't remember that one. I know
In
that there was one that there was a guy who went and lived with bears by himself and ended up getting torn up in
I think it
Alaska.
was I think it was Into the Wild. Like, yeah, there's this
Yes,
notion of
yes,
like, yeah, I don't need anybody's help. I don't think that's true. I mean, I think we really, and again, this comes back to like, and the other thing is you got to set up the support system before you're in a crisis.
hmm,
So, like, and that's look, it could be Rotary Club, it could be a mastermind, it could just be, you have three or four guys, you get on a call once a week or once a month. But yeah, we absolutely, because look, in a perfect world, you could stop yourself and go, is that true? But oftentimes when we're in a bad place and we're spiraling, it's much harder to do. And that's why having an outsider, especially someone that cares about you, that's why there's coaches.
yeah.
Is people to ask those questions.
So, Greg, I've absolutely loved our time together. How can people, if they want to be able to understand more about mind shifts, or if they want to work with you directly, how would they be able to get in contact?
Yeah, thanks. I'm just gregdinkin.com. And if you go there, you can see my TED Talk. I do keynote speaking. I'm a personal coach and I've written 6 books. But yeah, gregdinkin.com, or just I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram. You can find me there as well.
Amazing. So for anyone listening, we will have that in the description, so you don't have to go looking for it. It's like, was it Greg or was it GregoryDinkin.com? It'll be down there. All you gotta do is press a link, and it'll take you straight to his website. I would highly recommend, if you've made it this far and you've been listening, to go contact him and actually have a conversation, because this has been the one of the best conversations I've had on this podcast, especially when we're talking about mindset, because he didn't just bring the, as he would call it, as Greg, as you would call it, the woo woo side, where it's like, you just got to change your thoughts. It's like the actions also dictate that. So, Greg, I really do appreciate you being here. It's been incredible. And I'm excited for people to go and find you, because you have such a deep well of knowledge and experience and wisdom to be able to help people.
Yeah, and thank you. Look, you embody it. Like, hey, you want a better answer, ask a better question. You ask great questions that got
Thank you.
us to action and solution. And I think that's what people want, right? Like, so yeah, thank you for that.
Absolutely. For everyone listening, we'll see you in the next episode.